Hey guys, welcome back to another adventure in the Wentano region, and things are about to get spicy. You see, we just hit 500 subscribers, which means I owe you a huge thank you and some big bits of information about the region. Today, you're going to get another ghost type, 2 new Gigantamax forms, and a first look at the competing evil teams of Pokemon Amber and Pokemon Granite, our fake titles. Go Hero Swarm, Rise Rage Ranger. Before we get into some absolutely insane Super Sentai antics, let's talk about cute little ghost types. I've expressed my great love of these Pokemon before in our Poblazix video, but I wanted to add another ghost type Pokemon to my region. The tricky thing is always going to be finding inspiration for these Pokemon. I mean, a ghost is a ghost, right? Outside of having it possess a new object, what's really left to be done? Well, I do think that we often forget that the ghost typing is also reminiscent of spirits and beings from worlds beyond ours. Look at Dusknoir, not possessing anything, and it evolves from a Cyclops mummy. Even Hisuian Zoroark is more of a mystical spirit than a ghost possessing something, though it was once alive and then it died and then... Anyways, it's complicated. I think that taking this route will be much more beneficial to my region because I want to make sure that our ghost types vary the spectrum of spooky ghost possessing something and spiritual being, almost like a yokai if you're into that sort of thing. Now, yokai are quite popular in Japan, and you might be surprised to hear that they are in America too. Now, they aren't one-eyed umbrellas or anything like that, but we do have our fair share of mythologies around cryptids. Things like Bigfoot, the Jersey Devil, or if you visit any medium-sized lake, there's an insert lake name here monster. The list goes on and on and on. One that is heavily mythologized in the western portion of the United States is the Wendigo. This is due to its strong ties to Native American culture. Are a Wendigo real? Everybody knows someone who swears they are and swears they saw one. But what even are they? Well, specifically, they come from Algonquian lines of folklore, though I've heard similar stories from other tribes as well. Essentially, the Wendigo itself is an evil spirit that possesses humans and has human-like characteristics, but it takes over these bodies, causing them to become insatiable cannibals. They have been described in a couple different ways, but the main depictions of Wendigo are emaciated beings, super-duper skinny, with deer and human features mixed together. I've just described something that you might feel intense. And now you're probably wondering how everything I just described is supposed to be represented in this purple furball. I think it would be incredibly disrespectful to Algonquian peoples to rip off their mythologies and just translate them directly into a Pokemon. For me, that just doesn't work, as it could come off as infantilizing their culture and history. What I do believe is appropriate is to take inspiration from the Wendigo and try and adapt it in a way that feels genuine and sincere. To me, that means creating a humanoid animal spirit hybrid with an insatiable hunger. Does it hunger for humans? Well, we'll get into that. Just don't go outside, okay? It's dark. You never know what's out there. Meet Wendell, the hungry spirit Pokemon. Wendell are the primary reason that Wentano campers have to hide their food in locked boxes at night. For something that isn't technically living, they have quite the appetite. Whatever this Pokemon once was, it has now been reduced to a rotting pelt and some skeletal remnants. Its horns and tusks aren't very large, indicating that they may have belonged to a much younger Pokemon who passed away. Now we can get into the good stuff. What is my Pokemon? Well, I'll tell you this much. It's definitely dead. We touched on this briefly in its Pokédex entry, but Wendell is actually possessing the corpse of some poor Pokemon. When it evolves, that remains the case as well. You see, this pair of Pokemon is actually the spirit inhabiting the corpse, and it reeks of something awful. It's almost like the physical form evolved alongside Wendell, as we see a much larger body and more impressive skull. We also see all 4 limbs, where 2 of Wendell's were obscured by that shaggy fur. In designing this Pokemon, I really wanted to accentuate the emaciated body that we described with Wendigos earlier, but also retain the shaggy fur from Wendell. That's why I settled on turning it into a mane instead. This gives me a pretty funny idea though. What if this Pokemon could pull the rest of its body up inside of the mane, leaving only the hands and skull face visible? That would almost make it look like a Wendell, but it would require someone who knows the difference to tell them apart. The thing that drives this Pokemon is hunger, no doubt about it. Once it evolves, that hunger only becomes stronger, which makes it dangerous. Many used to fear this Pokemon as it could become entranced by its own insatiable stomach, rampaging until it had eaten its full. The problem with this is that it would eat anything: food, furniture, families, you name it. They've been shunned from Wentano society because of this dangerous tendency, but pushing them out of the cities has only made it harder for them to feed and made encountering them in the wild that much more dangerous. Some do believe that those who've been devoured by this Pokemon are reborn as new Wendell, as if its own hunger wasn't enough and it had to pass it on to the other spirits. They often are considered to be so dangerous that even if they're caught and trained, some cities who have experienced their rampages won't allow them to be brought out of their Pokeballs. There are people studying them, though, and forward-thinking trainers who have realized that regular meals is all it takes to make a friend out of this ghost-type Pokemon. Meet Wendigool, the insatiable spirit Pokemon. Wendigool have an incurable hunger that has landed them in an unfavorable light, both within the mythology of Wentano and the modern view. Should they go too long without eating, Wendigool will begin to rampage, consuming everything in sight until they have had their fill. It is said that those who are eaten by Wendigool will have its hunger given to them and be reborn as Wendell. Now, on to Gigantamax, or in this case, Heromax and Furymax. You may have seen our last sub-special, but if you didn't, here's the breakdown. The Wentano region possesses the same energies that Galar does, allowing its Pokemon to Gigantamax and Dynamax as well. But there's also something different at work here, and really, it's two somethings. Regardless of which version of the story you're experiencing, the legendary Pokemon of Wentano have added their own energies to the Dynamax energy, reshaping it. It happened once anciently, and now it's happening again, as a great evil has broken free of its chains, and valiant souls have reawoken to fight it. When the box legendary for Pokemon Granite adds its energy to a Pokemon Dynamaxing, it Fury Maxes instead. Again, you may remember this from our previous special, but we took a look at Furymax Crawdon, and now we're going to be taking a look at the very first Furymax Pokemon you'll encounter on your journey, both in Pokemon Amber and Pokemon Granite. Furymax Pokemon are under the control of the villainous Team Rage in Pokemon Amber, but are allies to Xander in his quest to stop the villainous Team Hive in Pokemon Granite. Regardless, I want all of the Furymax Pokemon to fall into one of two categories, Kaiju or Super Sentai Villain of the Week. Crossover permitted. In the case of Furymax Cacturn, we are leaning more into Super Sentai Villain of the Week. I don't know how much Power Rangers everyone has watched, but I've done my best to watch basically everything that ran from Mighty Morphin through Samurai, and some of that pirate one where they can all turn into the other Rangers. That's cool stuff. But I feel like every group of Rangers has to at some point face a villain with a clown or circus motif. And that's what Furymax Cacturn represents. Awakened by an ancient relic, this Pokemon takes on a new form, inspired by stilt-walking clowns and those big cannons that they love to shoot out of at circuses. I actually got this idea when I was goofing around with Cacturn's hat. I knew I wanted to do something with it, but I couldn't figure out what. When I split it down the middle, it hit me. It could be the perfect transition to a jester's hat. He already had that interesting diamond motif that I could be transitioning into a clown costume, and I could just move the holes representing his mouth closer together and force them into a smile. As I was drawing the cuffs on his arms, I realized how easily I could just stick some Cacnea in place of his hands, and then boom, no more human cannonball. Now there was only Cacnea cannonball. It even sounds like a special move that you would hear Villain of the Week use against our Super Sentai heroes. I know that most people love to turn Cacturn into like a gunslinging sheriff, and that its dark typing lends itself to a more serious tone, but as I kept going with this design, I realized that Cacturn's body proportions were basically perfect for what I wanted, and that all I had to do was stretch them out a little bit. I think we're due for a dark type clown, and though he may seem less serious than normal Cacturn, I can assure you there are plenty of things he does not find funny. His jokes always land, and his seed bombs always bomb, but that's according to plan. Meet Furymax Cacturn, the furious scarecrow Pokemon. Furymax Cacturn has been overcome by rage at crows and other Pokemon not being scared of it. To combat this, it becomes something truly terrifying, an evil clown. If that weren't enough, it gleefully launches Cacnea from its twin arm cannons as seed bombs. No one is touching your crops now, but they may not be there when Cacturn is finished. Now, a brief recap of what Heromax is, and how it differs from Furymax. You see, Furymax can only happen to Dark-type Pokemon, consumed by anger. The box legendary of Pokemon Granite taps into this rage and gives the Pokemon more power, enlarging and changing it. Heromax energy comes from the box legendary of Pokemon Amber, but it comes to Pokemon who help and protect others. The contrasting themes of these imaginary titles are the value of individuality and the value of unity. Pokemon Amber seeks to free a world consumed only by self-interest, where Pokemon Granite seeks to free a world from group thought and sameness. In Pokemon Granite, though the antagonistic Heromax energy is accepted freely, once accepted you join the antagonist Pokemon's hive mind. In Pokemon Amber, Furymax energy is given to Pokemon consumed by rage and selfishness, which is then the antagonist to you. I'm sure you've got it by now, but I just want to really hammer home that both ideals are great when balanced. There's value in being an individual, and there's also strength in numbers and in learning to work together. To me, that's almost always the final message of Super Sentai, that each hero brings their own strengths to the table, but that only through working together and combining their strengths can evil or difficulty be overcome. We already looked at Heromax Herocross in a previous video, but by now you've probably noticed that Heromax Golisopod is what we're working on today. These Pokemon are equivalent to the Super Sentai Zord. We're going to get into the designs later in this video, but there are rangers who will pilot or train each of these Zords. Each Heromax and Furymax Pokemon are guards of ancient relics that, when united, will free the antagonistic legendary Pokemon. The tricky thing about making Pokemon mechas is that I want to be very careful to distinguish them from future Paradox Pokemon, and I also want to make sure that they're more than Pokemon robots. They're mecha, with accentuated or altered features that empower them. Is a T-Rex's tail actually a drill, like the T-Rex Zord from Power Rangers Dino Thunder? No, but it's flippin' cool, I'll tell you that much. For Heromax Golisopod, I wanted to do two things: turn its arms into hookshots, and make sure it could roll into a ball and move around that way. Now, the pose hasn't reflected either of these things very well, so enjoy some concept art that shows what I envisioned. I took inspiration from Zabimaru in Bleach and settled on a design for the arms that allows each segment to... That's a verb and a noun. Anyways, they do this while remaining connected by large steel cables. The twin spikes on the final segments can impale and stick to things, while the body can then roll at full speed towards the impaled object or foe without letting go. It's two things that a normal Golisopod, not empowered by unity and friendship, definitely cannot do. In fact, I don't think Golisopod can actually roll up at all. This is probably because of its bulky armor and the fact that it's based on deep sea isopods, which don't roll up either way. Meet Heromax Golisopod, the unified scale Pokemon. Heromax Golisopod's strategy in battle is to identify its opponent's weakness, lock onto them, and strike hard. It achieves this by launching its claws forward, impaling foes or obstacles, and then rolling full speed towards them while still attached by the large steel cables that hold their claws together. Combined with the mind of Green Hero Swarm Ranger, Heromax Golisopod becomes incredibly difficult to stop in battle. I want to say one thing before we get into our Hero Swarm Rangers and their counterpart, the Mountain Rage Ranger. I'm not a people person, and what I mean to say is that I'm not a people drawing person, actually. I'm working on it, but if you've seen the human designs in this video, know that they were made months ago in a hurry because I underestimated how much time I would have to get those videos out. Think of them as concept art, as I'm redesigning all characters, hopefully soon, and my ability to draw people has improved greatly since those were made. Now for the Rangers. We're going to start with the Hero Swarm Rangers, which are also Team Hive, based on which game you're playing. Anyways, these are what you might call the standard Rangers, the main 5 that our show would focus on initially if it weren't a Pokemon game. In Pokemon Amber, you might fight alongside these Rangers to subdue Team Rage and their goals to release Mamma Rage. You probably see that the Blue and Green Rangers are counterparts to Heromax Herocross and Golisopod respectively, but do you think you can guess what the other 3 Rangers here are? The Purple Ranger specifically took me forever. I tried everything I could to make it look not like a bunny rabbit, and it just kept happening. Moving on to the next helmet, the Amber Ranger. This helmet is worn by the leader of the Hero Swarm Rangers and shows off its direct connection to the box legendary of Pokemon Amber. I really struggled with this one. There's a phenomenon in Super Sentai where a 4th, 5th, or 6th Ranger joins the team, but they always have a more over-designed costume and gimmick. Anyways, the Ranger here should meet that criteria, but my initial design just didn't hit for me. I decided to redesign it entirely with 2 main goals. I needed a way to incorporate the bug-like protrusions, but I didn't want them to look silly. And I needed to create a visor that stayed true to its inspiration, while, again, looking much cooler. The main issue I had with the initial design was just, it felt silly. Anyways, goal achieved, and Bakurada will be very pleased. The Granite Ranger didn't need redesigns because it instantly became my favorite helmet of the bunch. It captured Mamma Rage's shapes perfectly and made for one cool design. I think the deep red color may not feel like the stereotypical granite color, but I'm okay with that because it reflects the strong emotions and righteous anger that this ranger feels as it tries to liberate Wentano from Team Hive's mind control. I'm trying to give you story spoilers here without ruining everything, but if you hear me name drop legendaries or gloss over story points, just know that I'm trying to tease you a little bit, give you an image of what's to come. Team Hive and Team Rage will also need helmets for their minions. Every Super Sentai has these guys who just look like humans in silly jumpsuits and masks, so these will be them. I try to tie them back to each of the team's general shape language while dumbing them down because honestly, they should toe the line between interesting and uninteresting. I know it sounds weird, but I want the trainers who wear these uniforms to feel insignificant and small because I think that will make our main cast shine. One last thing I want to show off is my initial concept for the 5 main Hero Swarm Rangers uniforms. If you remember Greta and Peter from Pokemon Amber, that we put out a story video, that one, this is what they're going to be wearing, or at least some variation of it. This one's actually the base for Peter's, though I want to work around his body proportions more directly. One thing I want to avoid that Super Sentai does do is sterilize body types. When you see this design, think of it as the base model, and look forward to seeing each of our heroes wearing their uniform in action, looking like themselves. Let's talk details though, because there are some cool ones. To start off, I love the big H across the chest. I feel like interrupting the bridge of the H with the hexagon shape really made the design more interesting, and I wonder if you would have even noticed an H was there without me saying so. I've tried to work a couple more hexagons into the boots and gloves as well to give you some more cohesion to this design. Also, before anyone asks, yes, the belt is supposed to remind you of the black portion of a Pokeball. I did this on purpose, especially because when using the Red Ranger, it really accentuates the design. I wanted these to feel like a combination of the worlds of Pokemon and Super Sentai in one. That's why you have a red top, black belt, white pants. Thank you all for being here, for watching, for subscribing, for everything. 500 is a huge number, and I'm so grateful to have you guys along for this journey as we create something incredible. I hope this bit of world building makes this episode extra special for you. I'll try to have full story videos back up and running once I've built out some more confidence in my human drawing capabilities. Until then, thank you.